So we have ourselves a good old Gudagudo rerun going on in the NA version of the game. So it's just a non-stop hype train of just really hype servants, because now we have Maou Nobu getting her rerun and she's getting her first buff. Now she will get another buff later on in the future. I am going to cover that buff in today's video, so that if you have Maou Nobu or you're planning on summoning for her, because let's be honest, it is Mommy Nobu, and even though I don't think I'll ever personally use her, I might just summon for her, you know, just for, let's just call them reasons. And so if you're a like-minded individual, maybe you're also going to be summoning on her and would like to know that, hey, she is going to be getting some buffs in the future that do make her a little bit better. She's historically had a lot of problems and has not been very liked by people that are really heavily onto the gameplay side of things for FGO, which I know all of the lore people and the waifu enthusiasts are just like, oh, gameplay, what's that? But it's like, yes, there are people as well, like myself, that really enjoy also playing the game of FGO, and she's had a kind of a rough time when it comes to pleasing people on that side. Now, definitely with 2 of her buffs, she's a lot better than when she came out. And really the only thing that I think she's really missing would be like a crit damage buff. I really think that's the only thing I'd like to see them give her, because at this point she's really got it all. So if you summon for Maou Nobu, you're actually gonna get some mileage out of her. But let's go ahead and start off by talking about her hits, which are a little strange because she's rocking the triple buster deck, but she has really high hits on her buster cards. In fact, she has 6 hits on them. So when you look at that, you're like, ah, maybe she'll be like the Berserker version of Nobu, or maybe she'll be like Skahawk, where they have such high natural NP gain. And even though they have only 1 arts card, if they can lead that arts card in front of the buster cards, they can actually use said buster cards to refund NP, because leading with an arts card raises the NP gain value of the entire Brave chain, and because those buster cards have high hits, it ends up working out that they actually refund you a decent bit of NP. Now, the problem is that they have really high NP gain values. Specifically, Berserker Nobu is rocking like 0.92% NP gain, whereas Maou Nobu over here is only rocking 0.49%, and I really don't know why it's that low, because it seems like they gave her all the pieces to do the NP refunding with the buster cards, which I always think is really funny to see, but then they just kind of at the finish line maybe just gave her 49% of instead of like 89% or something. Like, it's probably supposed to be higher, because usually when servants only have 1 arts card, and granted she does have a 4-hit arts card, which is really strong, and if you can crit on said arts card, even with the NP gain that she has, that can still result in a massive amount of NP being refunded just because of the raw hits on the arts card. But it's like, when you only have 1 arts card, they usually give you a higher NP gain value, and it's just a little bit of an oddity. Thankfully, they did give Maou Nobu other ways of refunding her NP, and she is an Avenger, so basically, anytime the wind blows and she takes a slight amount of damage, she's going to refund a metric ton of her NP because of those Avenger passives. But it's still just a little bit of an oddity that I thought I would go ahead and point out. But that in and of itself is not going to ruin the servant, just make things a little awkward to use. Then again, Koyenskaya came out, and Koyenskaya basically just says, here, have all the NP you could ever want, and makes them insanely cracked. Now, starting off with her first skill is a pretty just straightforward skill. She's getting a 30% attack buff that'll scale into a 50%, then 70% attack buff in the next 2 following turns, and it's basically just like it gets stronger every single turn, right? She just keeps powering up as the fight goes on, and this is on a 5-turn cooldown. So you could view it like monstrous strength, because it starts off at 30%, which is pretty close to the usual 40% that monstrous strength starts off as, and then in the next turn it surpasses it by rising to 50%, and then nearly doubles it by going to 70% on that 3rd turn. So she's definitely capable of outputting a decent bit of damage just pretty much off this skill alone, and doing damage is pretty much the name of the game for Maou Nobu, so it's a very good start for her style of gameplay. I also like that this is the way they kind of did it, because it makes her really interesting to use, and it's not like she's restricted to anything at the same time. So they gave her an interesting mechanic, but didn't completely flop the servant because of it. And then they also gave her a way to proc Burning Battlefield on herself while taking a little bit of burn damage, which, you know, kind of makes sense because she's lighting herself on fire. Who would have thought she would have taken burn damage for doing that? But that Burning Battlefield is going to be important for other parts of her kit, as we'll get into in her second skill. This is actually somewhat of a really strong defensive, and now because of its buff, special damage mod skill because it gives her invincibility for 1 turn and 100% buff removal resistance, which you guys have seen me talk about in some more recent servants is a very good combo to have, because the invincibility can really only be gotten through if the opponent has pierce invincibility or they just remove the buff entirely. But because of the buff removal resistance, you at least completely remove that possibility by saying, hey man, you're not gonna just Shiro Amakusa rip all my buffs off. Or even to a lesser degree, let's say someone like Musashi who has a buff removal but it doesn't proc before damage. At the very least, with someone like that, you still save all of your other buffs, because keep in mind, this protects all of your buffs for that turn, not just your defensive buffs. So you can keep your attack buffs, your special damage mods, all the other good things that help Maou Nobu function. And the special damage mod that she's getting, the Sky Attribute one, as long as she's on Burning Battlefield, which she procs on her first skill, is rather good when you consider that she's an Avenger and can pretty much be used to fight any servant that's Sky Attribute, which is very, very solid if you don't have specific people to take down these people. Like, let's say you're fighting Gilgamesh and you don't have Enkidu or Karna. Well, you can go ahead and bring Maou Nobu because she has special damage mod against Gilgamesh. Well, technically double special damage mod, but we'll get into that later. And so it makes her very effective for that. But then all of the actual normal enemies on Sky Attribute as well are people she can hit. This includes people like the doors, the hands, books, ghosts, demons, golems, very common enemies. And so it makes her very good for cleaning up other mobs as well, because the Sky Attribute is just a very nice special damage mod to have, and it greatly contributes to her viability. Then we move over to her third skill, and this is the one that actually, when they buffed this recently, I think this made a huge impact on her, because one of the more notable things that they went ahead and did is they buffed her 20% battery to a 30%, meaning when the append skills come out on the NA version of the game and this buff drops, Maou Nobu could have a quote-unquote 50% battery because of the 30% battery on her third skill and the 20% start of charge that the append skill gives her. And this is significant because Koyenskaya wants to be used with people that can get up to 50% NP in some capacity. Obviously, she prefers if you have your own 50% skill that you can just give yourself your own 50% battery because she wants to refund your things, but it's still technically possible if you can do it with an append skill, right? Like, you could still kind of get around it in some ways. And so it's very, very nice for that. She also then gets a Buster buff that as long as she's on the Burning Battlefield, which again, she gives to herself on her first skill. And it's a 30% Buster buff that is going to multiply into the attack buffs and the special damage mod if you're fighting a Sky Attribute person to give her just a metric ton of damage. And then one of the nice things she also has is that every turn for 3 turns, she refunds 10 stars for herself, which really just leaves me kind of wanting her to get some type of like crit damage skill that also gives her star weight. Because if you guys don't know, Avengers kind of have poo-poo stinky star weight, so it's kind of hard for her to collect those stars for herself. But if they buff skill 1 and they also say like she gets, you know, I don't even know, just like 1000% star weight for 3 turns, and then her crit damage goes from 30 to 50 to 70% like the attack buff, I think that would actually be really, really strong, because then it would kind of complete her kit. And that's really all I think that she's lacking, because when we go over to her NP, I mean, if you bring this lady to fight anybody that has divinity, she is going to throttle them, because she removes all of their defensive buffs that procs first, by the way, meaning she effectively has pierce defense, pierce invincibility, sure hit, can get around solemn defense. She's just absolutely insane. The only way you don't really get to use this very effectively is like if the enemy has unremovable buffs, but those are a little bit more rare. And on top of her being able to just strip them of all of their defensive buffs, she also just then smacks them with a special damage mod, meaning she is absolutely insane for fighting divine opponents, whether they be servants or just actual divine, you know, normal enemies that you might fight. So is she worth summoning for? I mean, it's really hard for me to say that, yeah, you should summon for Maou Nobu, because I don't think she's bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think, especially after both of her buffs, the only thing she's really missing is like a star weight skill plus some crit damage. So at least in that capacity, she's a little more self-sufficient. But then realistically, you're probably just going to use Koyenskaya to give her those things that she's lacking anyway. And she'll perform pretty well, especially again against divine opponents, where she just pretty much absolutely obliterates them by being able to remove their defensive buffs and smack them with big damage. But again, you guys know what I'm going to say, Castoria is just a few months away, and unless Maou Nobu is one of your favorite servants, which I can completely understand, right? Unless she's filling that criteria of being a servant that you absolutely love, she is one of your favorites, You gotta stay strong, hold out for Castoria, and trust me, it's gonna be worth it. Castoria is absolutely phenomenal. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Leave a like on the video, subscribe. We're trying to hit 100K, and we are making some pretty good progress towards that goal. You know, I can basically sniff 20K already, which is something I just never thought I would ever get to. It still baffles me that we're this close anyway. But now we're going to the moon, boys. We're going to 100K. But make sure you do all that. If you want to support the channel for free, you can come out to my live streams where I stream on Twitch, which is linked in the description down below every weekday. You can download LD Emulator using my link in the description down below. That also helps me out. And then finally, there's loot cakes, which you can also sign up for as well, which gives you a little bit of points whenever somebody in my alliance spends money on FGO, and then you can use those points to buy gift cards once you accrue enough to redeem for said gift card. So just gives you a little bit of something back for your purchases on FGO. Just makes your purchases a little bit more valuable in my opinion. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace. Late, guys.